all three of us have been playing a game that's not new, but feels new, perhaps. Cyberpunk 2077 is back. It is it's got renewed life. It's disco, right? We all hated it, and now we love. Hey, man, this was cool all along. The new 2.0 giant update that revamped a whole bunch of systems, adds a bunch of new graphical bells and whistles, and all kinds of cool stuff, is coming out alongside the first huge DLC called Phantom Liberty, featuring Idris Elba. And I know, Jeff, you've been playing it. Christian and I have been playing it. What do you think of Cyberpunk now?
Yeah, so when it first came out, Cyberpunk, I reviewed it. I gave it a 3 out of 5 back then, and people were really mad at me for saying the game was a 3 out of 5. And then it came out, and 2 weeks later, like, I can't believe you gave it a 3 out of 5. That's way too high. I'm like, okay,
gotta love the internet.
Cool guys, thanks. So I'm someone who, 3 out of 5 meant I liked it. I had a good time with the game when I first played it. I think that it is a much better game now, obviously, in a lot of ways. The key ways are the character building and be able to spec out your characters better than ever. Just having the more cyberware slots and kind of realizing that was the strength of the game is very good. The combat, that makes the combat even more fun. And then this Phantom Liberty DLC is just a cool spy thriller story in an awesome setting with amazing visuals and great acting. And I don't think, the dialogue isn't that much better than the original. It's still kind of cheesy sometimes, but that's not a problem. That kind of goes with the setting a little bit. Yeah. So I think it's a good game that is now a very good game in a lot of ways. It's still not what I think was promised in those trailers from E3, and that still rubs me the wrong way a little bit. But when I just accept it for what it is at this point, it's like, well, I sit down, I have a good time with it. It's not going to be some immersive sim where every decision I'm making is being reflected back by this world, the way that they definitely try to make it look in those early trailers. But when I go from one point to the next, I follow the story, it is building up interesting characters. It makes me curious about the MacGuffins. It makes me curious about the motivations of all these agents working in this space. And that is more than enough because, again, it's a gorgeous looking game. I just like spending time in it. So if they give me a good reason to do that, I'm going to be all aboard.
Now that it is, revitalized in this specific period of time, coming out alongside Baldur's Gate 3, alongside Starfield, how do you think, and you already kind of talked about how it's, its RPG promises in those early E3s, maybe still not living up to them. How do you think it reflects in the shadow of these huge role-playing games that have become so popular just in the last couple of weeks?
I think it compares pretty favorably to something like Starfield, where it's like underneath Cyberpunk feels pretty similar to a Fallout game in a lot of ways, but it makes a lot of the improvements that I think people wanted from Starfield in terms of character models and animation and overall visuals and overall immersion of the visual space. But I think I don't think it compares very favorably to Baldur's Gate 3 or a lot of other or even just a lot of other open world games too, where it's like the open world itself is still mostly a veneer in Cyberpunk. Like it exists to be looked at from a distance, and if you go up and try to do something with it up close, well, you could shoot them. You could shoot these people. That's about it. Yeah. And even the cops, the improvements they made there aren't it's not that much of a game changer. It's still kind of a bit stale. So I think that they have figured out a lot of their problems, but it's not like that night and day. Oh, this is a completely different game that something like No Man's Sky got. That was like, that they've put so much work into that over so long. And even like the early updates, it was a big change. And now they've done 5 updates since then, 5 big free updates. So, I think Cyberpunk has found its footing. It's clearly changed the narrative. People are very happy with the game. And I think they should be, because it was always a good game. And now it's something that I think anyone can go into. And if you start with like the Phantom Liberty stuff, you're going to be in a very good, worthy game, worthy of coming out right now and try to compete with all these other things that are coming out.
Christian, you've also been playing it. What do you think?
I love Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. I will get ribbed for this later at the end of the year if this holds up, but right now I'm going to say it. It is worthy, or it is able to be considered for a favorite of the year. I think it is that different, or that much of an improvement. It is that big of an expansion. I've put probably 17 hours into Phantom Liberty. I have not rolled credits in it yet. And also just to clarify, Mr. Kanata, the 2.0 is out as of we're recording this. For the base game, Phantom Liberty comes out in a few days, but 2.0 to the base game released prior. And I'm blown away by what 2.0 is and what Phantom Liberty brings to that as this whole package. So it is DLC that's only current gen, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. And I should say I was provided a code for Phantom Liberty by NVIDIA, whose DLSS 3.5 tech is in the game.
Amazing. It's amazing. It's so
Truly
good.
amazing.
It's truly
stunning.
amazing.
Amazing. Like, I don't think I'm just impressed by the shiny flashy, but if I am, call me shallow all day, because if this is what shallow looks like.
This is the first time it's worked, though. This is ray tracing finally coming into its own. Like, we had reflections are cool, shadows are cool, global illumination, where it actually, the light actually works the way you want it to. And it's like we've even had global illumination before, but 3.5 with the denoising tech that they have on the ray tracing, the path tracing now, really actually has come into its own, to where it's like, oh, I could see how this is better than a bunch of artists working on rendering light for hours and hours and years and years and years. It's like that. Finally, this is better than that.
It is stunning. I totally agree, Mr. Grubb. Like, what they've brought to the table with this tech, Kanata, we talked before about in Portal and how the button looked like a delicious piece of candy that you wanted to eat. Now, every piece on my motorcycle, I'm still mostly a bike chick in Cyberpunk, and every piece on my motorcycle is this beautiful glass that's transparent and looks like candy, and the color comes through, and the headlights are reflected around with the full path tracing in the game that CD Projekt made with Cyberpunk is a perfect showpiece for it, because it's neon soaked at night, raining, all of this stuff happening. And it astonishes me that, and I know Phantom Liberty is new, but even just base 2.0, Cyberpunk 2077, that this game came out in 2020 or whenever it did, like these characters seem so fully realized and well animated and brought to life in a way. And I don't know if it's just because I'm coming to this after rolling credits in Starfield or not, but I'm blown away by the changes made to 2.0. So what I did is you can jump right into Phantom Liberty like you could on the Witcher expansions. You could just kind of give you they'd give you a Geralt that had some perks, and you could assign them and to give you a quick little recap, and off you could go. Or Phantom Liberty unlocks about 10 to 12 hours into Cyberpunk is when you can kind of go on that tangent, if you will. And so I reloaded a save that was 8 hours into Cyberpunk 2077. I didn't remember what I was doing, but I keep my save scumming going. So I found one that was 8 hours in, because I wanted to put a lot of time into 2.0 before opening up Phantom Liberty. So I put in about 4 hours in 2.0 before I got the quest prompt to go do Phantom Liberty, and just playing around in that. So for folks who don't know, the perk system is totally reworked. You have vehicular combat, which is awesome, because before I'd get in trouble in my car and it just became whack-a-mole, but instead it was ram-a-mole. And I was like, who can I run off the road as other people are shooting at me? And it just wasn't enjoyable. The stamina system is totally changed, and that took me a while to wrap my head around, because now it's tied to weapons and dashing, whereas before it was tied more to just your general character movement. And so it kind of slowed down how you progress through the world. And then the other big change is the armor and cyberware, the amount you're able to have and how you get it. So now in 2.0, any Ripper doc can apply any mod, more or less. Whereas before, it was like, oh, I really want, what's the one that makes you go invisible? I forget what it's called. I want the invisibility thing, because you hear about it. You'll hear world chatter about it, or some enemy will have it and they'll talk about it. But you can't just go to a Ripper doc and get it. You got to find the Ripper doc that's in the docks, and they're not open at this time. And there was all this extra work that I think was intended to make the city feel real. But as a game, it was a real bummer. It's like I went to Best Buy, give me the Spider-Verse Blu-ray. I want it where I want it. And then coming off of Starfield, which I really enjoyed, and we've praised the crap out of on this show, I took some notes as I was playing Cyberpunk, and I think what kind of blows me away about it in terms of relation to Starfield back to back are these cinematic character interactions. We joked about Kanata on a Wednesday episode. Starfield does the Bethesda center screen. You're locking. Yeah,
Oh,
Jeff's
hello.
doing it now. Yeah. Oh, hello, Jeff. I'm curious if you've also played Cyberpunk.
Oh, yes, I have. And so has Joanne. Right, Joanne? Yes, Larry, I have.
And meanwhile, in Cyberpunk and Phantom Liberty, these characters are moving around the world, and the audio is incredible. If you have like a good sound system or good headphones, where Idris Elba walks behind you and that tracks, and he's performing, or the character's performing. He'll like go lean on the bar, fiddle with something, like this very real, lived-in space that these characters are doing as they're monologuing at you and giving you this information. And that just felt so refreshing and so cool to see these interactions. There's one in Phantom Liberty where behind the person talking to you, there's a one-on-one basketball game going on, and it's incredible. I got lost in, like, they're talking smack, they're passing the ball to each other, they're like chest bumping. The one guy just like gets the ball off the sideline, and the other friend like kicks it and throws it out again, and he's like, "Why'd you do that?" Just like this drama happening that is beautifully animated, and the characters are like emotive and expressive. And then the other really big thing about Phantom Liberty for me is how it, again, I'm 16 hours in, I haven't rolled credits, but it turned down the dank version of Cyberpunk. Like, it's still Cyberpunk, but in the main game, minor spoilers, you are sent to houses of the oldest profession and engage in it in a way, and given options to engage in it in a way that don't feel great. I think like the base game Cyberpunk has some like, isn't this world gross?
Yeah, it's
Isn't
pretty.
this-
It's like Eastern European edginess that
Yeah.
they needed to kind of outgrow a little bit. Yeah.
Like, isn't this sexy? You're on drugs? Drugs are cool. Don't do drugs, kids, but aren't they cool? And Phantom Liberty leaves a lot of that behind. You're still in a dark, seedy world, but the way they have it closed off, and it's run by this military dictator. And as Grubb described, it's this spy thriller and double crosses with a very clear villain. Well, a very clear villain that unfolds and whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, no, but there's more to it
Yeah,
than
yeah,
that.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
there is. Yeah.
And then the other part that I really like about this game, I think it probably when I'm playing it, comparing it to Starfield, is the way it handles this main mission. As V, you're given this thrust, you're given this mission, you're set off to do something, and then you're interacting with these other characters, and how it encourages you to explore the world is trying again to have this real lived-in city where Idris Elba will say, Reed will say, I'm going to go look into this too. It's going to take me a while. I'll call you when I'm done. It's probably going to be a day or two. And then you as the player are like, oh, Reed's not going to call me for 2 in-game days. So now I can go explore the world, do all these side missions that might actually give me information that's going to help me in the main mission. Or you can go into the options and say skip time and just kind of stay on that treadmill. But I like the way it encourages you to explore in a way that, again, feels real. And while it is not a full immersive sim, the times I've had, I think maybe because it's a smaller landmass on Phantom Liberty, the times I've had random NPCs talking about things I did have been awesome, where I've stopped and listened. And in one moment, I'll be very vague. Like, I was trying to be stealthy. I messed up. I went, Matrix lobby scene going into the elevator, just blew everybody up. And I hear these other people talking about it and how they're going to reinforce defenses at this location. Then later, I'm doing a side mission, and I see on the sign it's that location. And so I don't know if I could have, it was heavily guarded. Now, is it always heavily guarded? I don't know. I didn't save scum that far back to then go do it. But it felt like there was this thing because of the thing I did. Dude, and the cities feel lived in. It has a world city map. I'm saying all this, and I'm spending a lot of time on it because I am absolutely blown away by 2.0 Phantom Liberty. The DLSS 3.5 stuff is an absolute game changer. And to eat crow, I would not have played this game if I was not given a code, or if I heard someone sing its praises the way I'm hopefully trying to do right now to our listeners. I would have been like, I like Cyberpunk, but like Grubb said, 3 out of 5. I reloaded every time NVIDIA put cool new tech in it because it's a
totally.
world I wanted to live in and just drive around in. Now it is a world in which I want to play. It is, I love it, Kanata. I absolutely love it. I'm blown away.
I don't have much to add. You've played more of it than I have so far, and for me, it's just hard going back to Starfield, just because from pure visually, like it is
the visuals, yeah,
just night and day difference. You go back to Starfield and you're like, oh, I thought this game looked good.
and it looks old. It looks
old.
Compared to Cyberpunk, it looks very old.
And Cyberpunk's the old game. That's what's weird
compared to Skyrim.
Yep, kind of, yeah.
But I mean, it's wild to me that this 3-year-old game is one of the most visually dazzling things I have on my hard drive, and seeing it in super ultra wide, seeing it with all the bells and whistles on. Like Christian, we got codes from NVIDIA, we got cards from NVIDIA, so we're very lucky to be able to talk about the game on its highest settings. But if you have the ability to look at this game, it's not one to be missed. It's really, really beautiful and it much improved. I'm planning to play more of it this week, so I'll have more coherent thoughts. But I agree with Christian's overall views that if this was the first release of this game, I think it would be giving all the other major heavy hitters this year a run for their money. I mean, it's a jam-packed year of landmark releases, but I think if this was you never get a second chance to make a first impression, but if this, if people were coming to this for the first time, if it had been delayed 3 additional years, I think people would be like, whoa, this game's incredible. So it does not feel like a 3-year-old game to me.
I think Idris is great in it also. I talked about how I was hopeful that Megan Fox would be awesome in Mortal Kombat 1, and apparently it seemed like maybe she didn't get the direction she needed to be her best self in that game. But Idris, I feel like definitely talked to Keanu, and they talked about their experiences and his whatever full mocap he did and his voice lines. Like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of cheesy B thriller spy stuff that happens, but his voice acting and performance in it, I think, is phenomenal. It's
yeah. And he's not always performance captured. Like, you get the moments where like he's in the car and you could tell like this is a mechanical animated person just kind of doing the hand animation. But even that's like, that still looks way better than something you get from Starfield that uses a similar kind of thing. Yeah. And there's more Keanu in it than I was expecting. I was like, oh, well, they'll pay one or the other. So like when Keanu disappears early on, he gets replaced in your head for a moment. I'm like, well, there he goes. I'll see you when I go back to the base game. And it's like, well, no, he's totally going to be there. He spends a lot of time talking to you still. And I guess that's the biggest takeaway I have from this is they spent money on this. There is a lot of effort put into this, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of new voice acting. And I mean, it's kind of hard to like state this properly. So much new stuff. It feels in a lot of ways like a full-on sequel. Or maybe an standalone, like Miles Morales is kind of, I think, the best point of comparison here. That alone is making it be like, okay, yeah. The fact that you've played 17 hours, that you're not the only person I've heard say that, like, oh, I'm 15 hours in, I haven't seen the credits for this. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, that is a full new game.
Yeah.
And the gunplay too, I think that's the last, I flew my mind before, comparison between this and Starfield. I liked Starfield's perks. It was fun, like, oh, anti-grav or explodey fiddly bit or whatever. Cyberpunk, it feels like a shooter, for better or worse. If you weren't, I think that's part of where the reaction was too. Is like, this isn't The Witcher. This is a first-person shooter, and it controls just as well as the top-tier shooter should control. It feels tight. It feels precise. The gunplay's great. Yeah, they knocked it out of the park.